Have vax will travel. Europe set to open its borders to Americans just in time for summer. The crypto market takes a beating. We'll tell you why. And how some curious kindergartners foiled a hijacking in progress. Thursday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Thursday, May 20th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning.
Good morning, Jill. May 20th. Wow, this month is really cruising along here, huh? How are you?
I'm okay. I'm very upset about just like this crazy rise in anti-Semitism, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show. But I'm not just upset, like I'm actually scared as a Jew right now in living on this planet. But anyway, I don't want to be such a downer at the top. In all honesty, I'm quite troubled by what's going on.
Well, honesty is what we're here for, so I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts in a moment.
Okay, if you have been jonesing for a European vacation, and who among us hasn't, you can finally pull the trigger. The EU has approved a plan to reopen borders to fully vaccinated travelers or anyone coming from COVID-safe countries, and that will include the United States. The plan is expected to be formalized and implemented by all 27 member states officially next week, just in time for summer. Children who are too young to be eligible for vaccination can travel, but they're going to have to show a negative PCR test. Anyone coming back into the U.S. will still need to show a negative test, regardless of vaccination status. Meanwhile, Reuters is reporting that the White House is considering easing these strict restrictions that bar a lot of the world from coming here.
I hope that they do that soon so that my in-laws can come. Although maybe I don't. I don't know, actually. No, I
can't. You do. First of all, you're going to want as much help as you could physically get, and as many people as could fit into your apartment. You're going to want help.
You're right. I kid. Joe, God, has there ever been a moment in history when so many people are in such need of a vacation? Like, think about it, right? Literally everybody. It just deserves a holiday right now. There's sort of this like thing going around online about this idea of like a summer slowdown. You know, maybe everybody works for just 4 days instead of 5 through Labor Day. Maybe we try and make the week of July 4th a national holiday where nobody works, just like literally nobody. Like it would only really work that way if you just shut everything down. No travel, no businesses, no restaurants, no nothing. Just a week of like hanging out with your family and friends. This is never going to happen, of course. Our economic system is predicated on the gears of consumption never stopping. But I mean, it's a fun thing to fantasize about, right?
They do it in other places. One of my good friends works for Japanese Vogue, and she has August off. Like, she has the whole month of August off. It's not a question. She goes to Montauk, and I would used to take, Fridays off and come and visit and do a long weekend. And it's the greatest gig. It's like, that she has, and that's what you get when you work for a company that's not based in the U.S., I guess.
It's so true. I mean, anybody who's been to Europe, in basically any part of Europe in August, gets it, right? There's just nothing open, and people just make do with that. They build it into their plans. Honestly, imagine if Biden came out and he was like, I'm doing an Oval Office address from the White House tonight, and I'm just going to say straight up, America, the week of July 4th, you're off. Just stay home, hang out. Don't stay home because you're in lockdown. Just have a barbecue, chill, block parties. God, wouldn't that be amazing?
Except that they'll say essential services need to go on, and news is always considered essential. But we can dream. Okay, let's go to the Middle East. Some early signs right now that the fighting between Israel and Hamas could be easing amid international calls for a ceasefire. Both sides have halted fire for several hours this morning. It's unclear, though, if this lull was part of an agreement. Israeli media reporting that the military believes it's achieved most of its goals. Earlier, the White House said President Biden told Benjamin Netanyahu that he expected a significant de-escalation. Germany and France also adding to the calls for a ceasefire.
There's a column in Bloomberg today by Eli Lake that I thought I would flag. What's the title of this column so you can find it if you want to read it? It's called A Ceasefire is Not Enough When It Comes to Hamas. He basically is making this point. He's calling on Biden to think creatively about how to get rid of Hamas for the sake not just of Israel, but for the Palestinians. in Gaza, basically saying there can't be true peace in the region until Gaza has new elections and votes out Hamas once and for all. Because remember, they are an elected, the elected government there. And he pointed to a poll that I thought was a little fascinating, showing poll was taken before this latest fighting, and I don't know how it would have shifted since then, but it showed that only 30% of Palestinians said that they would vote for Hamas if there were an election today.
So the problem that Israel faces, and that one of the issues and the biggest challenges is that, that the longer this goes on for Israel, they destroy Hamas's infrastructure, and they're thinking, okay, they're trying to buy themselves another 5 to 10 years of quiet. I mean, that's pretty much the calculation is like, how much can we do? How many military targets could we take out? Like how much could we get done in this time period between demolishing tunnels and other Hamas infrastructure that's going to buy us just a few years of quiet?
Right. It's just buying time. Right.
But at the same time, the Palestinians, I think, the support for Hamas grows during these times because it's seen as a group that's fighting for them. Because we know so many innocent civilians get caught, unfortunately, in the middle of this. And so if you're looking for someone to blame, you're probably going to blame the person who fired the rocket, not necessarily the person who started it, or as Israel would say, look, Hamas is using children and as human shields and civilians as human shields. But I think the tendency is probably you want to just support anyone who's fighting for you.
Yeah, it's like rallying around the leader in a time of war anywhere, which I'm sure is part of the Hamas calculus, right?
Okay, so I mentioned at the top of this podcast that I'm just really upset this morning, and it's because of this real startling rise in anti-Semitism, which I had been talking about actually since before the start of this recent war, but it has exploded. And everyone likes to say anti-Zionism isn't anti-Semitism, and Carlo, you and I have discussed ad nauseum that you could criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic, right? I mean, you can have Israelis criticize Israel and its policies and its politicians. So that's not, you can have a very reasonable political discussion and it's not anti-Semitic. But what is happening in the past few days has shown that for many people, there is not a divide. A few frightening examples: a convoy in London with Palestinian flags screaming on loudspeakers in a residential area. F the Jews rape their daughters. They didn't say F, they used the 4-letter word. Here in the US, I don't know if you've seen this video, in West Hollywood, video showed a large group of mostly men dressed in all black driving a vehicle that had a Palestinian flag, attacking people who were eating at a sushi restaurant in West Hollywood. Witnesses said that the group was asking specifically for the Jewish people to identify themselves. Anti-Semitic incidents are up 400%. I saw a video, and I don't have all of the details about it, of another attack at Essebagel in Manhattan, which is Essebagel is I guess you think of bagels and Jews. It's frightening.
Great bagel.
The only people that I really see speaking out about it, at least I've seen, are Jewish. I send my daughter to a Jewish school. I spoke on the phone yesterday to the director about security. I'm genuinely frightened, and I know that you could say, well, how do you think the Palestinians are feeling right now, and the Israelis are in bunkers? I'm not talking about that. This is the United States. We're saying that there's a difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, and I don't even want to talk about it because I got a lot of negative emails from people saying that I'm biased and they don't want to hear my opinion on this, and I get it, and I don't want to delve into the Middle East conflict, and I'm not going to opine on that. I'm just telling you that what's happening in this country right now in terms of anti-Semitism is frightening, and it's not just this country, it's around the world. And I realize people probably don't want to hear it, and I got the message from a lot of our listeners that they're not interested in my take on this, but I have to speak out, and I'm scared.
No, thank you for speaking out, Jill. I'm sorry. I feel sad when you have to feel this way in the United States of America in 2021. I mean, just talking about how there's even a security person at your daughter's school alone is just heart-wrenching, right?
I'm going to start to cry. But I'm sad, and again, it's like I know no one's interested. It's like I almost feel like I can't talk about this here because
you can talk about anything.
People don't care and don't want to hear it. And I've gotten the message. I got your emails, but then don't listen. Because this is real, and this is happening, and we have to wake up. And again, we have to be able to separate what's happening in the Middle East. If you want to say I can criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic, then speak out about what's happening right now to the Jewish community.
You're here.
Okay, back at home, Texas now has some of the most severe abortion restrictions in the country. Governor Greg Abbott signed a bill into law that prohibits abortions as early as 6 weeks, 2 weeks after a missed period and before many women even know that they are pregnant. With no exceptions for rape or incest, private citizens can also sue abortion providers for, quote, aiding and abetting any woman who violates the ban. Texas becomes the biggest state by far to have such a strict abortion law on the books. This is before many women even know that they're pregnant.
6 weeks. Oh, God. Texas, a state where the government they can't mandate you get a vaccine, Jill. The state can't get involved in that. That's infringing on your personal freedom. But they can mandate that a woman carry her rapist's baby to term, right? That makes total sense. Abortion advocates vowing to fight this so-called heartbeat bill in the courts, where they will win because it's unconstitutional, at least for now, maybe not for much longer. Once the Supreme Court starts to dismantle Roe v. Wade, these laws are going to become the standard for probably half the country. And that's completely at odds, again, with the public polling on abortion rights, where significant majorities are in favor of abortion being legal. And that actually cuts across most sort of demographics. It's not, there's obviously, there's plenty of people who are pro-life, but the polling shows it's not really that. The majorities are fairly significant on the side of abortion being legal.
The American West staring down the barrel of a very worrisome summer. The entire western half of the United States is in some state of drought. Lake Mead is so low that Arizona and New Mexico are considering unprecedented moves to ration water so that it doesn't impact electricity production at the Hoover Dam. There have already been significant fires in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. Very unusual for this early in the year.
Yeah, we said, I think, a couple weeks ago, right? It's not really a fire season anymore. It's sort of this just constant state of existence out there, especially in California, Arizona, the Southwest in particular. But I think if I had to bet, I'd say we're going to eclipse last year's record of 10 million acres burned, just based on the drought conditions out there. And I'm very curious because I don't. Obviously this is not an issue where we live. So I'm curious to hear from folks if you're living out in California, Utah, any of these states, Colorado, what you're hearing just anecdotally, what your local municipalities are telling you about water usage. This is going to be a big deal this summer, Jill. It's really scary.
I don't even remember it being this warm here. I mean, I know this is totally different, but I don't recall 80 degrees for an extended period of time in May in New York.
I think it was almost 90 yesterday in New York City. And obviously you can never you can never say like, oh, it was 90 degrees yesterday, like that's because of climate change. But obviously climate change is, when you take like the bird's eye view of things, climate change is why this is happening, right? And we're going to have to wake up to this. Like this, you can't start if we start rationing water. I mean, whoa, right? That's like dystopian novel stuff.
When I was at NBC many years ago, I was doing a story. I remember my boss had me looking into a story about Lake Mead and how it was already at record low levels. So we're now, 20 years later? It's frightening. To the markets, cryptocurrencies crashed back to earth during a frenzied sell-off that hit all corners of the cryptosphere. Bitcoin at one point falling as much as 30% in the span of just a few hours, touching $30,000 before making back some of the losses. Ether fell as much as 40%, Dogecoin down as much as 20%. The losses were so widespread at one point that they bled into the regular stock market, which has been in the red for most of this week.
This all basically stemmed from this news that came out yesterday that China was going to ban financial institutions from participating in any crypto-related business. That was widely expected, but it still, I think, really jolted people, just because these markets are so volatile to begin with. So all they need is like a little push to one side, right? It's like how Elon Musk tweets something and Dogecoin goes up or down based on what he says. China has never been hot on crypto. They say it's because it's too speculative. The real reason is because they are creating what is essentially their own cryptocurrency based off the yuan, this digital yuan that they're doing, which is honestly, when you start reading about this, it's really scary. When you think about money, if you don't carry cash around you, you think that money is all digital at this point anyway, right? But it's still pegged to real, actual paper currency that exists in the money supply in the United States. What China is doing is actually replacing their legal tender with essentially computer code. In addition to being able to they'll be able to monitor every single transaction that happens domestically, which is the reason why they're doing it. But also just imagine what this could do to the global financial system to have an untethered currency used by 1.4, 1.5 billion people. I mean, it could have expiration dates on it. Imagine that, money that you can only use for a certain period of time that they can put an expiration date on to, so that people spend it when the economy needs a boost. I mean, this is it's a real national security risk when you think about it.
So I also think the Colonial Pipeline hack was another big negative because we know that the hackers were demanding payment in, I believe it was Bitcoin, or at least it was some type of crypto. And that basically adds to the argument that eventually there's going to be some real regulation on the crypto market. So I think that play a lot of factors, I think, playing in at once. But I was listening to a few analysts saying, if they're in it for the long haul, they're still holding on.
I don't know. I don't even like opining on this because I feel like I so don't understand it. But yeah, I don't know what else to say.
And it's ironic, though, because we're seeing so many institutional investors and so many just traditional mainstream companies accepting Bitcoin, getting into crypto. But what this is, I think if you're a believer, you're kind of just like, this is par for the course. It's what happens. It goes it goes down and then it goes up really quickly, and just hang on.
No, I saw some people on Twitter saying this is great. Now I'm just going to buy more Bitcoin.
Buying opportunity. And I don't totally understand it either. So anything we're saying is not advice at all. I just want to make that clear. It's more just us trying to figure out what's going on. The summer music festival season's coming back with a vengeance. Lollapalooza released its lineup featuring Megan Thee Stallion and Foo Fighters headlining this 3-day event in Chicago's Grant Park in late July. Lollapalooza is going to be held at full capacity, 100,000 people, provided that attendees show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test.
Across the pond in the UK, organizers got approval to put on a one-day festival at the Glastonbury site in September. They're going to call this thing Equinox. I've always wanted to go to Glastonbury. It looks like probably the best of the festivals. If you watch go to YouTube and type in Glastonbury Live. There's so many performers, and they really, the crowd is just incredible. They put on great performances there. Also, Pitchfork, Summerfest, Bonnaroo, Firefly, Electric Zoo, Governor's Ball also among the big festivals that are planning to open the gates after a year's pause. I don't think I'll be doing any of this year, but it is these festivals are fun, Jill, I have to say.
I've never been to any of them.
Really?
Yeah. I don't like crowds. I think that's what it is.
I get that. It can be a little much if you don't like crowds, but that's why they invented booze, Jill. True.
Everything's a little bit better. Finally, a school bus driver in South Carolina is crediting his 18 elementary schoolers for foiling a hijacking in progress without anyone getting hurt. A man with a rifle boarded Kenneth Corbin's bus earlier this month looking for a ride to the next town 20 miles away. He only made it 6 minutes until he just gave up in frustration when the kindergartners on board wouldn't stop asking him questions. Corbin said the hijacker became so exasperated that he pulled over and just let everybody off. Corbin and the kids are being hailed as heroes.
I just love this story so much. I feel like if anybody who has a 5-year-old or has ever had a 5-year-old is just like nodding silently in agreement right now, like, yes, that's what they do. They ask questions until you want to drive yourself.
What's that? Why do you
crazy,
have
right?
that? Why do you have
what are
that?
you doing?
Why is that?
So look, it's a funny story. I mean, it would be nice to live in a world where 5-year-olds don't have to worry about men with rifles hijacking their school bus. But, cheers to these kids and this driver for getting this done safe and sound, right?
Yes, and here. Okay, that is what you need to know for Thursday, May 20th.
Okay, Jill, I hope you feel a little better today, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.